Mixing is extremely important. You need to make sure that your song sounds good no matter what device somebody is listening to your music on. You need to make sure that your song sounds just as good as the last song they just heard on Spotify. Now, I know mixing can be difficult, but today I'm going to show you 5 mixing tips in under 5 minutes that will change your mixes forever. Let's start with number 1. Parallel compression. Parallel compression is when you send everything to a second channel and then you compress that one really hard and blend it in with the original signal. So here's what the drums sound like without parallel compression. Now all we need to do is create a new bus, split the signal off from this over to the drum compression bus. I like to add just a little bit of saturation for color, and then I love to use a distressor with a 20:1 or a nuke ratio, and then I adjust the input, the attack, and the release until everything is sounding super punchy. Here's what it sounds like in context. Tip number 2 is sidechain compression. Sidechain compression is really great for that pumping effect like in EDM music, but it's also really great for getting sounds out of the way of something more important. I like to throw a compressor on my bass and sidechain it to the kick and to the snare. That way, every time the kick drum hits, that bass is getting ducked just a little bit. This is especially great if you split your bass into separate sections. You have a gritty, distorted bass, and then you have your sub bass, and then you can throw that compressor just on the sub low end of the bass. Now, if you don't have the ability to do that, or you want a simpler way of doing it, that's where tip number 3 comes in, which is multi-band sidechain compression. I know that sounds super confusing, but trust me, it really is helpful once you understand it. Multi-band compression is just a compressor that you can set to specific bands like an EQ. And multi-band sidechain compression is the same thing as sidechain compression, but instead of compressing everything like a normal compressor does, we can just duck the lower region here. So we can set this to anything under 80 Hertz gets ducked every time the kick and the snare are hit. And the only thing being ducked is the low frequencies, anything under 100 Hertz. You can even run this down to 80 Hertz or even 60 Hertz. Now, tip number 4 is the cut boost method. This is one of the first mixing tips that I actually learned that blew my mind at how simple it was, but how effective it actually is. If you find something clashing, like the drums and the bass, for example, what you do is you throw an EQ on the bass, and you can boost 80 Hertz by about 3 dB, and then you can cut 80 Hertz by about 3 dB on your drums. This carves a little spot in with your drums and allows you to put the bass there in that area. It's such a simple but effective technique. Now, tip number 5 is extremely powerful, and it's called the reference track playlist. If you are not using reference tracks, stop what you're doing, start using reference tracks. It sets your expectations for the mix that you're about to mix. If you don't know what a good chocolate chip cookie tastes like, you don't know if you made a good one when you throw a bunch of stuff together and put it in the oven. You want to set your expectations before ever going into a mix, and reference tracks are extremely powerful. Now, what makes this tip even better is you throw every mix that blows your mind into a playlist on Spotify or wherever else you like to listen to music. When you're listening to music and something catches your ear as a great mix, you just add that to a playlist, and then you can pull it up whenever you want. Right before you go to mix a song, you open up that playlist and play a couple songs from that playlist. It sets your expectations on what a good mix sounds like, and it gives you a clear path on what to do next. I learned this technique from one of my good friends, Alex, who learned it from Greg Wells, who has mixed for Adele and tons of other big names. If it's good enough for him, it's definitely good enough for me and every one of you as well. If you love this video, you're gonna love my masterclass on mixing vocals. It's completely free, link down in the description below. There's almost an hour's worth of in-depth teaching inside of that masterclass that'll help you get the best vocal mixes of your life. So click the link in the description, you're gonna love it. Otherwise, click on this video here and I'll see you over there. Now, as always, go create.